Hi everyone and welcome back or welcome to my channel Stitches Past 5. My name is Vera and here I like to talk about anything that's going on in my knitting life. So today is a very exciting to me video because today I'll be sharing my spring knitting plans slash knitting inspirations. We are like in March at the moment and I feel like it's finally getting warmer. I don't know, I think there's just such a wave of energy, wave of life that comes once the sun actually feels like it has a little bit of power again. Yeah, I think here we're very lucky because we do get really fun winters. We're outside all the time in the winter, skiing and doing all those good things, running, hiking, which I acknowledge is not something that you can do everywhere. But that doesn't mean that it's exciting when the air just smells a little bit like spring and the flowers start coming out underneath the snow. And that's the phase that we're kind of in at the moment. And it just also means that I'm really excited to knit garments that are a little bit lighter and just kind of to take the season into my knitting. Today I want to share some of the patterns that inspire me. I have a few patterns that I want to share, acknowledging that the spring doesn't last forever and I probably won't be able to make all of them because I do work full time and there's only so much knitting in the day that you can do. We're also, doing a lot of running at the moment because we're training for a pretty long race and running also takes up a lot of time. So just acknowledging that I'll be able to make what I make and that's totally fine because I have a life outside of knitting. I think often, I don't know, it gets a little bit overwhelming when you're seeing all these people and all the things they make and everything they're knitting super quickly, and I feel like, I don't know, I just have other things going on, so it's not that easy for me to kind of make a sweater every other week or something like that. So before I go into the specific patterns that I'll be making or that are inspiring me this spring, I want to talk a little bit more about what textures and what colors and what types of knitting that I'm looking forward to this spring. So in terms of the colors, I am just kind of finding myself gravitating towards more neutral colors. I think I'm someone who enjoys her colors. I love, blue, red, just the intense colors for my garments, but I think I'm also kind of slowly but surely gravitating more towards my neutral tones. So you might have already noticed that in my, knitting podcast over time that I think I'm kind of neutralizing my colors a little bit, and I think for spring I'll continue to do that, but I also want to incorporate maybe some pastels, maybe some lighter colors. Now with my complexion, that's not always the easiest because I just suit colors that are a little bit more intense better. I find whites and creams and all those are beautiful, but that's not really my ideal top color. So that's that in terms of color. I think what I'm really looking forward to is a lot of texture. So I've been really inspired by different textures, be that lace, be that cabling, be that texture that just kind of comes out of purling and knitting. I find all that very interesting, very intriguing, and also textures in terms of thinning down. Maybe make a few less items but make them in thinner yarn instead, because of course it takes a lot longer. And yeah, I think overall just saying yes to more intricate patterns and with the seasons changing as well. So without further ado, let's get into the patterns that I want to be knitting this spring. I want to start my spring knitting plans with two items that I will definitely be knitting this spring because I've already started them in the winter. They were actually, or one of these was part of my winter knitting plans, and one of them was kind of a spontaneous winter cast on, mainly because I got the yarn gifted and I was super excited about it. So the first one is the Elizabeth blouse by Petite Knit. I am making this in the Touch Possum Silk Merino wool. So this is yarn from New Zealand and it is 60% wool, 30% possum fur, and 10% silk. So it's kind of like a specialty yarn, which I'm super excited about. This is the yarn that I got gifted and I just kind of cast it on immediately after looking for a pattern for a really long time, because it was a little bit difficult because my parents gifted me 3 gray balls and 1 orange ball. So I think just that combination was not the easiest to find a pattern for. but I'd settled on the Elizabeth blouse, so grey with orange stripes. I'm about halfway through that project, so my priority this spring will be finishing that off. It is a relatively like thin yarn, but I think it's a little bit warm. So yeah, I guess that's my first spring knit, but I talk about that in my podcast all the time, so I just wanted to mention it here. The next spring knit that I want to make is also finishing another winter knit, so this is on my winter knitting plans, and I just casted it on a little bit late because we were on a month-long holiday in January in the tropics, so there was no sweater knitting like going on anywhere in that time. So I casted it on I think in February, and yeah, that is the Simple Things sweater by Kuta Bakika or Veronica Lindberg, as seen in her book Knits to Wear. I'm making this out of this yarn, so it is the upcycled alpaca blend by Hobie. This is a 100% recycled yarn, and it is made of 34% acrylic, 33% alpaca, and 33% wool. And I'm making this sweater on, I believe it's 4.5mm needles at a gauge of around 19 or 20 stitches per 10 centimeter, if I remember correctly. There's not much to the sweater at the moment, so I'm also like, part of me is like, do I finish it in the spring or do I just wait till the autumn and finish it? But it'll probably just be something that's going on the side. Okay, so now moving on to the patterns that I'll definitely be making, mainly because I already have the yarn and I've been wanting to make these patterns for a long time. The first one here is the rhythm socks. So these are socks, part of the 52 Weeks of Socks books, which I have as an ebook, and the designer is Trico Design MCL. These are these striped slash pattern socks, and I'll be making them for my partner probably. I have a bunch of sock yarn at home. I usually use the Regia or the Schachenmeier 4-ply sock yarn at a gauge of 28 to 30 stitches per 10 centimeters. I really enjoy using that sock yarn. It's durable. I've used it for a long time, and my mother and grandmother have also used the sock yarn for a long time, which speaks for it. This is, I guess, a pretty basic pattern, but I always like having something small on my needles when I'm traveling somewhere, or something that's just kind of like mindless on the side that will get done once it does, but there's absolutely no rush to. The second pattern that I think I'll be making with this yarn that I already own is called Floors by Eri Shimizu, and this is kind of this lightweight pullover sweater knit in this ribbing detail that I find very, very interesting. I think in the samples here it looks very subtle, but I'll be making it in this yarn. So this is the Seashell yarn by Hobie. This is a linen cotton blend, and it contains 40% cotton, 35% viscose, and 25% linen. I got it in this like bottle green color, or this forest green color. It is color number 13, so that's Seashell by Hobie. And yeah, the suggested gauge here is 24 stitches, which is exactly the suggested gauge on the sweater, so I think it would make for a really pretty lightweight sweater, perfect for spring. So those two, the rhythm socks and then the Florist sweater, are the two items that I will definitely be casting on this spring, alongside with my Elizabeth blouse and the Simple Things sweater. I think that those 4 projects will keep me pretty busy, like in the next like 2-ish months. And then I didn't want to already like fixate on a particular pattern that I would make like towards the end of spring, I guess. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share like a number of patterns that are all super inspiring to me, that I've either found like a long time ago and put them in the Ravelry folder of mine that's called Spring 2025, or they're patterns that kind of recently sparked my eye or sparked my attention. I will probably be making 1 or 2 of these. I just really don't know which ones yet. So if you have recommendations or experiences with any of these patterns, please let me know. The first one on this list is the pattern called Jutu. It is by Isabel Kramer, and it is in the book 52 Weeks of Easy Knits, which I own, which I like making things out of. So here the good thing is I guess I already have the pattern. It is a medium thickness, I guess it's a DK knit cardigan that kind of gets its detailing, its structure from the combination of knits and pearls. It is like just a pretty plain basic cardigan. I would probably make it in a neutral color, and it is probably also a project that wouldn't take too long because it is, you know, knitting and purling. I think it's on like 5mm needles or something, so it should be quite, yeah, standard to knit up. I think this also and all of my other inspirations will kind of fall under the category of textured knits. You will definitely find that, as I said at the beginning of this video, that's kind of what I'm inspired by right now. These are definitely patterns that like will include some sort of texture. The second pattern is from the same book, and this one is called Kupla. It is by Maya Kangasluoma, so I guess the name sounds very Swedish. I guess it's a Swedish designer. Like I said, also in the week 52 weeks of easy knits. And this to me is a very cool sweater because it includes this bubble like texturing with the two quite subtle colors, like very kind of like pastel-y colors. The gauge of the sweater is 26 stitches by 48 rows in 10 by 10 centimeters in this bubble pattern, which I think is a little bit smaller even than stockinette, just because I like how the bubbles kind of bulge out. So it is like a little bit of a bigger project, I think, because of its smaller gauge, and it's knit on 2.5 and 3.5mm needles. So I don't know if I will cast this on. I'm super intrigued by it. I think it's so beautiful and like just something different. Like we don't often see like a bubble pattern like this one. So definitely something I'm also inspired by. The next one is a pattern by Petite Knit, and this one is called the Esther Vest. I think I'm just like a little bit like entering my vest era in knitting, I think, at the moment. I just finished a diamond twill vest and I really like that one, so this one kind of sparked my attention right away. This one is a vest knitted in a DK plus lace weight yarn, so I guess a DK weight yarn, and yeah, it is like this beautiful diamond structuring and includes these buttons down the front. It's knit at a gauge of 20 stitches in this textured pattern on 3.5 and 3mm needles, and I think this is a really nice like lighter vest. The one I just made is a little bit thicker, definitely like a winter vest, and I do like the idea of just being able to wear the vest as well, like maybe on a cooler summer day. Another pattern I'm really like hoping to make is the directions or the direction loop tee by the designer called Other Loops. This one is knit up in a DK weight yarn and has a gauge of 22 stitches, and I just love like the saddle shoulder construction with the varying thickness of stripes of like the contrast colors of the t-shirt. Yeah, I really like this design. I don't have a yarn for it at the moment, so it's definitely staying on my list of inspirations, but if I find the right yarn, I might as well just cast it on soon. The next pattern might seem more of like a thicker winter sweater, but I do think made in a thinner yarn, this could be, or in a lighter yarn, this could be a really pretty springy sweater as well. This one is called the Waffle Loop Roll Neck, also by the designer Other Loops, and it just features this super interesting waffle stitch pattern. Yeah, I love the color that it's knit up on in the sample. It's knit on 3.5 and 4mm needles at a gauge of 21 stitches and 32 rows in this like waffle pattern, I guess. And this is one that I will be knitting. I don't know when yet, maybe this spring, but I will be knitting at some point because I'm just so in love with this pattern design. The next pattern is a like relatively similar texture, I guess, and that is the Aosta Cardigan 3.0 by the Knit Pearl Girl, and this is a V-neck opening cardigan, also in like this intricate waffle stitch pattern. This one is knit up at a gauge of 14 stitches and 21 rows and 10 centimeters, although it doesn't specify like if that's in the pattern or in stockinette stitch. I guess it's in the pattern, but it is knit up on 7mm needles, so it is a little bit of a thicker cardigan, so I guess it would be a perfect spring cardigan for those days where you can't really wear a jacket because it's too hot, but like an airy cardigan would be really nice. Next we have the Daimi sweater by Pernille Larsen. This is kind of like an open neck sweater with this beautiful lace detail on the sleeves. This, by the way, Pernille Larsen is the designer, or one of the designers behind Knitting for Olive, and this is just such like, this sweater to me screams spring, especially with the color used in the sample. Just like a light, fresh, airy color. It's knit up on 4 and 4.5 millimeter needles at a gauge of 20 stitches in stockinette stitch on 10 centimeters. This to me is just like a light sweater, it seems like, and depending on the yarn choice, it could definitely be like a less hot sweater, perfect for spring. Continuing kind of like my vest, you know, tendencies, I guess, is the Anemone vest, also by Pernille Lassen. And this is like a pretty basic vest with some beautiful flowers at the bottom. And this one is knit up on fingering and lace weight yarn. So on 21 stitches in stockinette stitch is the gauge, on 3.5 and 4 millimeter needles. And I think like what better way to, I don't know, knit for spring than with a few cute little flowers at the bottom, like just as a little detail. I think the Knitting for Olive website also features these sweaters full of flowers, which is like a lot of flowers obviously. So I think this is a really nice way to kind of like tone down the flowers, make it elegant, but still like make it spring. And the last sweater that's inspiring me right now in spring is the Amor sweater by Anke Strick. I guess it's a German word at least, or German designer. And this also features this beautiful, like very intricate textured sweater. It is knit up on 21 stitches in 10 centimeters on 4 and 3.5 millimeter needles, and again kind of goes with the whole like texture vibe, and like just like a lighter sweater that kind of lives off of its texture. It's like such a showstopper, this piece, I find. And yeah, again, I don't have the yarn for it, but if I did, I would probably be casting it on soon. Who knows? So those are kind of like the patterns that I want to share with you because they're beautiful and I think they're really just very springy in my opinion. I'm not gonna settle on which one I'm gonna make just yet, but I think that's the beauty of knitting. I might just stumble across a nice yarn that I want to make something out of, and then to have kind of this collection of items that I want to make in the near future for me would be perfect. That's why I wanted to share them with you here today. I think long story short, I am ready for some springy colors. Now I know that like this is not exactly the most spring color, but I mean, I bought it for a different project and then now cast on that project with a different yarn. So now I just have a sweater amount of this yarn, so I want to use it. But I'm just excited for some lighter colors, just like a little bit more uplifting, thinner items to wear this spring. Yeah, so those are kind of like my spring knitting plans. Like I said, those 4 items that I will definitely be making, and then a few other items, mostly sweaters and tops and vests, that I will make once I find the yarn for it, if I find the yarn for them. And if I don't make them, that's totally fine. Then I will probably carry them over to next spring, because yeah, if I still like them next spring, then I definitely know that it's a good pattern. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you're making this spring. I would love to hear it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and leave your comments down below, and maybe even subscribe and stick around, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.